Week 4 is officially in the book. Week 5 is here. Hopefully you won, and if you didn't, plenty of time to turn things around, plenty of time to hit the waiver wires, plenty of time to make trades. And as always, we like to give you our top 6 start running backs of the week and 3 running backs that we will be sitting going into week 5 of the NFL fantasy football season. So stay tuned. Let's ride. Before I get started, a quick moment for all of the Javonte Williams owners out there. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's going to happen. It happens to all of us, happens to the best of us. But once again, plenty of time to turn things around. So let's get to my number 1 start of the week now. Let's change the atmosphere. Let's do something special right here, right now in this video. James Robinson versus the Houston Texans. The Texans give up the most fantasy points to the running back position last week. James Robinson had a dud of a game, only 1 fantasy point, 8 carries. The elements played a part in this game versus the Eagles, but now he is playing the Houston Texans, who last week gave up over 33 fantasy points to Austin Eckler and the Chargers. And the week before that, Khalil Herbert, over 30 fantasy points, and he went 20 attempts, 150 plus yards. It was crazy. James Robinson could have that type of game. I believe this team is going to turn it around. I believe James Robinson is going to have an amazing bounce back game. Whether he may not get the touches or the yardage, all I know is he will score a touchdown in this game. So start James Robinson with confidence. And at number 2, we have, as a bonus, I like to give bonuses sometimes. I feel like I give bonuses a lot of my videos. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson versus the Detroit Lions. The Lions surprisingly give the second most fantasy points to the running back position, because last week, Rashad Penny in week 4, 17 attempts, 151 rushing yards, over 28 fantasy points. Whether it's Damian Harris, whether it's Ramondre Stevenson, this team is going to need to run the ball, because we don't know the extent of the Brian Hoyer injury. Maybe Bailey Zappi is going to be here, so maybe they're going to have to result in running the ball. This Lions defense is terrible. Bailey Zappi took this team into overtime against the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Don't sleep on him. But if Brian Hoyer doesn't play, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson could be seeing a lot of work on the ground. Once again, Rashad Penny had over 151 rushing yards, over 28 fantasy points. Damian Harris last week scored a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson was getting a lot of passes in the air, caught 4 or 5 passes in the air. So why not start both of these guys with confidence versus the Detroit Lions? And at number 3, we have Bobbin like up Dobbins, JK Dobbins, playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who give it the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. But look, after what J.K. Dobbins did last week against the Buffalo Bills, I'm feeling pretty confident in starting him this week. Not only about the attempts on the ground, but the usage in the air. He caught 4 out of 4 passes for 22 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, he was 13 for 41 yards, had over 22 fantasy points. Granted, a lot of those points came from the touchdown position, but even if you just take those 12 points away, he would have 10, 11 points against the Buffalo Bills. And I think that's pretty decent for a guy that we said to sit and to really wait and see what was going to happen in week 4. Now going into week 5 with the Cincinnati Bengals, a must win for both of these teams, to be completely honest. So if you can, start J.K. Dobbins with confidence moving forward. It's going to be tough to trust, but I think he is a must start going into week 5. And at number 4, start Devin Singletary versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who currently give it the 8th most fantasy points to the running back position. This past week, Devin Singletary had just over 11 fantasy points, had 11 attempts on the ground for 49 yards. But what really intrigues me is the opportunity he gets in the air. He caught 4 out of 5 targets for 75 yards. It was probably part of the game script. But it's really exciting that he's getting work in the air, right? And if he can continue to do that, then it's going to be really exciting. The Pittsburgh Steelers this past week just gave Breece Hall the first time, I would say, consider this maybe his really big breakout game. 17 attempts on the ground for 66 yards and a touchdown. There's no doubt in my mind Devin Singletary can do that in this offense. I think they're going to give him the ball, especially in the goal line. Obviously, we all know that the Bills love to throw the ball, but let's mix it up this week, and I think Devin Singletary will be a good start versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at number 5, start Miles Sanders versus the Arizona Cardinals, who give the 12th most fantasy points to the running back position going into week 5. Miles Sanders, he is our RB1. I mean, Have you seen the tweets? Have you seen the videos? Miles Sanders, what a fantastic game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 27 attempts, over 130 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, over 29 fantasy points. I'm not saying this is going to be consistent, but Miles Sanders right now, if you did a late running back strat, he's a good low-end RB2 that you can start moving forward. It feels like Jalen Hurts and this Eagles offense feels like it's a good, even offense, a lot of passing, a lot of running. So I feel like you can start Miles Sanders moving forward, who are playing. Once again, the Arizona Cardinals will give up 12th most fantasy points to the running back position. CMC this past weekend, he didn't do it on the ground, but he did it in the air with 81 yards in the air, caught 9 out of 81 passes, over 25 fantasy points. Miles Sanders can definitely do that. So start Miles Sanders in week 5. And at number 6, start Khalil Herbert versus the Minnesota Vikings, who gave up the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position so far. Look, if David Montgomery doesn't play, I think this is kind of a must start. But just to give you some confidence, Khalil Herbert had 11 fantasy points versus my New York Giants, which was great. Still had 19 attempts, 77 yards, so he's still getting the ball on the ground. But what's really helpful is who is he playing. Once again, playing the Minnesota Vikings will give the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position. In week 3, Jamal Williams, 20 attempts, 87 yards, over 24 fantasy points. Week 4, this past week, Kamara's out, Mark Ingram gets hurt, Latavius Murray steps up, 11 carries on the ground, 57 yards and a touchdown, over 13 fantasy points. I think Khalil Herbert can easily give you more than 11 fantasy points than he did in week 4. So start Khalil Herbert with confidence going into week 5. And as always, we like to give you our start list. And now we're going to our sit list. And at number 1, I have Ezekiel Elliott versus the Rams. The Rams currently give up the fewest yards to the running back position. Oddly enough, they just gave up a lot of yards to Jeff Wilson. But every time it feels like this Ram defense, they lose a game, they come back really strong. They lose a game, they come back really strong. And this is the comeback strong game versus the Dallas Cowboys. I do not want to be starting Ezekiel Elliott. He's been doing decent so far. He's getting the opportunities, he's catching the ball in the backfields. But I do believe this Rams defense is upset. They should be playing better, and they are going to specifically stop Zeke and Cooper Rush in this offense going into week 5. So sit Ezekiel Elliott. And at number 2, I am sitting Rashad Penny versus the New Orleans Saints, who currently give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Look, Rashad Penny did amazing last week. 17 attempts, 151 yards, 28 fantasy points. I said this in our sell take. He is a sell for me right now. But if you look back in the first 3 weeks, Denver, which is a great defense, just under 8 fantasy points. San Francisco, which is a great defense, under 2 fantasy points. Atlanta, which is in the middle of a pack defense, under 8 fantasy points. And then he goes to Detroit, who currently gives us the 2nd most fantasy points to the running back position. He gets 28 fantasy points. No doubt. I mean, shoot, I can maybe run that now. That's a joke. But imagine, like, if you're going against a defense that gives us the 2nd most fantasy points to the running back position, of course you're gonna have success. Now he's going and playing the New Orleans Saints, who currently give the 4th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. I think this is a trap. So if you have Rashad Penny, please sit him. Do not start him. I'll be really scared. And if he does go off, it's just a classic. It's just a classic thing. Like, anything can happen in fantasy football. So sit Rashad Penny going into week 5. And my last sit running back going into week 5 is James Conner versus the Philadelphia Eagles, who currently give the 16 fewest or most, right in the middle of the pack, points to the running back. So you can take that as you will. This past week, James Conner had over 10 fantasy points playing against the Carolina Panthers, and now he's playing the Philadelphia Eagles once again, who are in the middle of the pack defense. But let's look at what the Eagles did this past week. Holding James Robinson under 2 fantasy points and Travis Etienne under 4 fantasy points. But if we go back one more week to week 3, held Antonio Gibson to 11 fantasy points. Mind you, that the only reason why he has 11 fantasy points was because he had a garbage time touchdown. Literally one of the last plays of the game, Antonio Gibson scores like a 1 or 2 yard touchdown. So, I mean, we would be having a completely different conversation, one about Antonio Gibson and this Eagles defense. But look, this Eagles defense is serious. Jalen Hurts and everything that's happening on the offensive side of the ball is really helping the defensive side of the ball. So I am sitting James Conner going into week 5. Guys, These are my 6-start and my 3-sit running backs going into week 5. Guys, as always, relax, calm, plenty of time going into week 5 for the fantasy football season. So stay vigilant, keep grinding, make some trades, hit the waiver wires. We go live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday to answer all of your start-sit questions. Relax, we can help you out. Make sure you comment down below and like the video if you have any questions. And good luck in week 5.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.